Ashley stepped into a damp Friday afternoon with a heart more tangled than ever. Her apartment was bathed in a soft golden light filtering through the curtains, but her soul felt caught between two worlds, memory and reality. On one side was Derek, the ex-boyfriend whose steady gaze and promises of safe, stable love always offered comfort. On the other was Andre, the man who had abandoned her in her moment of need, but who now could make her pulse race with just a glance or a quiet goodnight. Ashley knew her mind leaned toward Derek, but her soul gravitated entirely toward Andre, the one who had once broken her, yet was also the only one who made her feel truly alive inside her emotions. Jan, Ashley's mother, arrived just as her daughter's emotions reached a boiling point. Jan wasn't just a mother. She was a woman who had once tasted the bitterness of wrong choices and the loneliness of post-divorce silence. She recognized instantly that her daughter was running from the very thing she had spent her own life avoiding. A love that wasn't safe, but made the heart race and the knees tremble. When Ashley told her about Andre, about the apartment he had decorated like a tiny corner of Paris just to bring her joy, because he knew she had always dreamed of going there, Jan remained silent. Not because she had nothing to say, but because she understood this was not a moment for logic. Jan had seen the spark in her daughter's eyes when she spoke of Andre, a light that Derek had never been able to ignite. Through all the confusion, Jan could see a ray of light piercing the fog of past wounds. Ashley couldn't admit to herself that she still loved Andre, even as everyone around her warned her about his past. Andre was a wandering photographer, free-spirited, unpredictable, and tangled in ambiguous relationships, including one with Dani, the woman who currently called herself his girlfriend, or at least tried to. But Andre was also the only one who made Ashley feel like the most radiant, most alive version of herself, loved unconditionally. When she visited his apartment that day and found every corner thoughtfully arranged to evoke Paris, from the scent of lavender candles to the warm glow of amber lighting and the soft hum of French CLA6 in the background, she nearly cried. It wasn't a performance. Or if it was, Andre knew exactly which notes would make her heart sing. Jan looked at her daughter with an expression that was neither judgmental nor indulgent. She didn't tell Ashley to choose Andre, nor did she urge her to return to Derek. Instead, Jan shared her own story about the chances at love she had missed out on simply because she was afraid. Afraid of pain, of abandonment, of being made a fool. She reminded Ashley that love was never a safe investment, and that if she was calculating risks and rewards, then it wasn't truly love. Jan wasn't the type to encourage her daughter to leap into danger, but she knew that sometimes the only way to feel truly alive was to take a leap of faith. Hints from beyond the gates suggested that Andre wouldn't wait much longer. This weekend, he would confess his feelings for Ashley, honestly, openly, without restraint. And when the two shared a passionate kiss, all of Fairmont Crest would tremble with gossip, speculation, and judgment. But the only thing that would truly matter afterward was Ashley's own heart. Would she feel peace in his arms, or would she feel herself splintering from within? Only she could know. Ashley was painfully aware that Andre was still entangled with Dani, and that knowledge pierced her heart. Not because she didn't trust Andre, but because she knew Dani wouldn't let go so easily. Dani was the type of woman who played all in, never mind the consequences. She used to be Ashley's friend, but now all that remained between them were fiery stares and unspoken contempt. If Ashley chose to pursue Andre, it wouldn't just mean embracing a complicated man. It would be a declaration of war against Dani, a confrontation neither woman would back down from. But Jan had said something Ashley could never forget. If you're not brave enough to fight for what you believe is yours, you've already lost it before you've even begun. That night, Ashley sat alone, staring out the window. The wind tugged at the curtains like it was trying to lift the fog from her mind. She remembered the nights Derek had held her close and whispered promises of never hurting her. And she remembered the look in Andre's eyes when he apologized. Not with words, but with the desperate gaze of a lost man finding light again. She felt the tug-of-war between safety and desire, between logic and feeling, between a man who would never hurt her and one who could destroy her, but also take her to emotional depths she had never known. Perhaps that conversation with her mother was the final push. A gentle nudge that made Ashley decide she didn't want to live her whole life with regret. Whether the ending brought pain or joy, at least she would know she had dared to love, dared to face her fears. And if Andre had truly changed, if that kiss was more than a prelude to another reckless game, then maybe she wouldn't have to keep running from her own feelings. Ashley stepped in front of the mirror, her fingers brushing the collar of her blouse, adjusting her hair. Not to be more beautiful, but to be braver. She knew the world of Fairmont Crest wouldn't easily forgive bold choices, especially when they involved a man like Andre. But she also knew she couldn't let Danny or anyone else dictate the fate of her heart. Regardless of community stares, rumors, or the risks of loss, Ashley was ready to face it all, because she knew that love was never easy, but living without it was even harder. And if that kiss ended up being the overture to a symphony of betrayal and heartbreak, at least she would cry as someone who had once dared to love, not as someone who had spent her whole life avoiding her true emotions. She didn't know what awaited her, but she knew she was ready to face it, not as a girl torn apart, but as a woman who had made her choice and would live it fully. Under the gloomy skies of Fairmont Crest, where every secret had watching eyes and every decision became fodder for public judgment, Ashley felt as if she were walking a tightrope between two towering pillars, one named love, the other truth. Each passing day pulled her closer to one of the two men who had once held irreplaceable roles in her heart, and yet both made her question herself more deeply than ever before. Derek was the certainty, the warm embrace during storms, the street lamp when all else became a blur. Andre, on the other hand, was the unexpected wind, the mysterious smile in the dark, the living memory that stirred every time her heart skipped a beat. Andre's return was no accident. Every detail had been orchestrated to lure Ashley back into the bittersweet memories of their past. The Paris-themed apartment was no artistic coincidence. It was a declaration, a plea for a fresh start. Andre knew she had always dreamed of going to Paris, a place where she believed love could begin again, where she felt she could be someone new, someone who dared to love and dared to believe. When she stepped into that apartment, with golden light filtering through white voile curtains, the scent of toasted bread and lavender dancing in the air, and the gentle strains of French music filling the space like a whispered promise, Ashley was shaken to her core. A part of her wanted to flee, to run from a place where her heart could break again. But another part, the part that refused to be extinguished, wanted to stay forever in that moment. Jan saw clearly that her daughter was being torn apart. In their last conversation, Ashley's eyes no longer carried defiance or resolve. Instead, there was an unsteadiness that reminded Jan of her younger self, when she chose safety over love. She knew Ashley was trying to love Derek with all her heart, but in truth, she was only trying to deny Andre's presence in it. Jan had once loved someone like Andre, a man with a complex past, razor-sharp eyes, and the ability to persuade as if the whole world were a play he had written. But Jan also knew that if she could choose again, she wouldn't pick the safe road, because love wasn't a mathematical equation. It was a song only the heart could understand. And if her daughter was hearing that melody, no one had the right to stop her from chasing it. Ashley had no idea that while she was fighting her inner battle, an external one was quietly brewing. Derek, the man who once loved her with loyalty and sacrifice, was no longer just the noble ex. He felt threatened, not only by Andre's return but by the changes he saw in Ashley's eyes. She no longer looked at him the same way. The blind admiration had faded, the trusting embraces gone. In their place were silences, hesitant answers, and distant gazes that drifted toward a place he could never reach. A place where Andre stood, smiling as if he had never hurt anyone. Danny, sharp and calculating, was also watching the unfolding story with the eyes of someone who had already lost. Andre had once been hers, even if only temporarily, and his turn toward Ashley felt like a slap to her pride. Danny understood that if she allowed Andre and Ashley to reunite, she wouldn't just lose a man. She'd be defeated by a woman she had never truly accepted as a friend. So she sought out Derek. At first, their conversations were discreet comfort, But they soon evolved into subtle proposals of partnership. They didn't need to do anything drastic, just plant enough seeds of doubt to leave Ashley confused. Derek didn't want to believe he was stepping into a dark game, but his fear of losing Ashley was too great. But fate always finds a way to mock those who plot too carefully. Just as Ashley was struggling to define where her heart truly belonged, she discovered she was pregnant. The news struck like a storm. She sat alone in the bathroom, staring at the pregnancy test, feeling as though the world had gone silent. Her heart pounded so loudly she could hear it echo in her ears. What now? Who was the father? Andre, with a night of passion and chaos? Or Derek, with quiet, familiar evenings that lacked the fire but offered routine? The question wasn't just a biological one. It was the beginning of a fracture waiting to deepen. Ashley told no one, not because she wanted to hide it, but because she wasn't ready to face it. She needed time to think, to truly listen to what her heart had been screaming. Jan noticed the change immediately. Her daughter was quieter, her eyes filled with unspoken tears, and her hands frequently rested on her belly as if seeking reassurance. Jan didn't ask, but she knew. And she knew that no matter whom Ashley chose, that choice would come with a heavy price. Meanwhile, Danny began to realize she was no longer the central player in this game. The plan to divide them now seemed meaningless when Ashley carried a tiny life inside her. With that life, the calculations of adults became small and irrelevant. Danny was no longer angry. She sat silently at her usual cafe, staring out at the sunlit streets with the eyes of someone who understood that sometimes fate had made its decision long before anyone realized it. No matter how much scheming, no matter how many strategies were drawn, it was always the unexpected that changed everything. And this time, the game no longer belonged to her. Ashley stood before the mirror, her hand on her belly. She no longer felt the fear that once gripped her. Maybe this wasn't the right time or the right man, but this child was real. And for this child, she had to be braver than ever. She couldn't keep living a lie. She couldn't love Derek when her heart, even unconsciously, ran to Andre every night. She couldn't make promises to one man while the image of another still lived vividly in her mind. It was time to choose, not just for love, but for her future, and for the small life growing inside her every day. Derek sensed the growing distance between them. When he asked questions, Ashley didn't answer right away. When he touched her hand, she flinched as though touched by a stranger. He understood even if he didn't want to accept it. Andre, though unaware of the pregnancy, sensed something deeper had shifted. There was something in Ashley's eyes now, tender, more grounded, but also shadowed with the fear of being hurt again, that made him feel a responsibility he'd never known before. A pull not just to return physically, but emotionally, as a man changed by his own past mistakes. On a late afternoon, Ashley found herself at Jan's home, her hands trembling, eyes brimming with tears. Jan, the mother who had been waiting for this very moment, said nothing. She simply wrapped her daughter in a tight embrace, because she knew some battles require no advice, only courage. And now Ashley was ready to face that battle, not just to fight for love, but to live true to herself, regardless of the losses, misunderstandings, and painful stumbles she might have to endure. But above all, she would no longer back away. No more safe choices. No more loving just to fill a void. This time she would love truly, wholly, and bravely. That night Ashley couldn't sleep. Not because of the howling wind rattling through old window panes, but because of the storm in her mind that kept spinning like a tornado. Her mother's words echoed like a haunting melody, messages that weren't orders but revelations, peeling back the truths she tried so hard to ignore. She had tried to love Derek with logic, with the sense of duty expected of a reasonable, grateful woman seeking stability. But her heart had never stopped quietly calling out for someone else. Someone who could make her cry over the smallest of details. A French lamp, the scent of lavender, a sorrowful melody he once played unconsciously when they were still together. She could no longer deny that her heart had returned to Andre, despite every wound, every warning the past had provided. Just as her emotions began to feel clearer, fate threw something even more incomprehensible at her. Life. A new life, growing inside her, came with countless unspoken questions. She couldn't lie to herself. Once the truth was revealed, nothing would ever return to what it was. Derek had the right to know, but would the truth destroy the last thread still tying them together? And Andre, could he handle the consequences of a relationship he once walked away from without closure? Or would he fall into the same silence that once shattered her, this time leaving not just a broken heart, but a child with no answers? At the same time, somewhere else in Fairmont Crest, two people once thought to be on the sidelines, gaze locked on his phone screen, where an image had just popped up. Andre embracing Ashley from behind at a recent fundraising event. No words were exchanged. None were needed. They both understood that if Ashley and Andre reunited, everything they had once believed in, everything they had once claimed, love, pride, loyalty, would be erased. But perhaps, while they were still scheming, everything had already spun out of control. Because Ashley, in her quiet resolve, now carried a secret larger than anything they could imagine. She was pregnant, and no one, not even Ashley herself, was certain who the father was. From that peristyled apartment, Andre remained unaware of the storm on the horizon. He still believed he had time to win Ashley back, to prove he was no longer the man who once walked away. But time was no longer on his side. And when he looked into Ashley's eyes and saw something new, something softer, more profound, but tinged with a fear of being shattered again, he too began to feel uncertain. He didn't know that he stood at a crossroads, where one wrong move could cost him not just the woman he loved, but a future he never thought he deserved. In Jan's apartment, the soft light from the bedside lamp cast the shadow of mother and daughter across the amber-colored wall. Ashley sat on the bed, both hands resting gently on her belly. Jan sat across from her, no longer just the observer, but the one who had to help her daughter stay grounded while everything around them threatened to collapse. But Jan knew well, this was a fight Ashley had to face alone. And what lay ahead was no longer just a choice between two men, but a decision between truth and deception, understanding and resistance, stepping back or moving forward toward a future guided by honest emotion. Would Ashley have the courage to tell the truth? Would Andre stay if he learned the child might be his? Or would he walk away again like before? Would Derek let go? Or would he erupt in fury and heartbreak long buried? And Danny, the one thought to be eliminated from the game, would she be willing to burn the whole board just to make sure no one else walked away happy? Ashley's heart now carried more than just life. It held secrets that could destroy or save everyone involved. And the choices she made next wouldn't just define her fate, but could trigger a new storm across all of Fairmont Crest. Because love, when pushed to the edge, always unleashes consequences no one can predict. And when the truth finally surfaces, who among them will still be standing?